Now, a few months ago, genealogist Anthony Adolph started looking into where Fern and I came from. So tomorrow you'll see what happened when he traced the Britton roots, which are apparently slightly grander than mine. But first, I'm intrigued to know what Anthony has found out about my family. And you had a bit of luck, didn't you?
Oh yeah, we had some luck. We had great fun doing it, and we found out all sorts of interesting things, which I'm thoroughly looking forward to seeing. And looking forward to you seeing them.
We put them all together. This is what you found out. My parents are glued to this at home as we speak.
You haven't seen it.
Now, I haven't seen it,
No.
and here we go.
I'm beginning my search here at the Family Record Centre in London. Now, this is where they keep all the birth, marriage and death certificates from 1837 onwards. So it's a marvellous place to start tracing your family history. Let's go and see what we can find. I already know that Philip's great-grandfather's name was Squire Schofield. And Squire, by the way, was his name, not a title. He was born around the late 1870s, and strangely, there was no birth record for him. But I did find his marriage record in the Oldham area. I also managed to trace back 2 more generations, but we'll talk about them later. Let's first focus on Squire Schofield and what life was like for him. My quest to find out more about Philip's family tree takes me from London to 19th century Manchester. I know from the census that the Schofield family were workers in 2 of the main industries in Manchester, cotton and iron. Squire was born into the Industrial Revolution. From the 18th century onwards, the Manchester area was the centre of industrialisation, making it the powerhouse of the British Empire. The area's changed quite a bit since Philip's great-grandfather, Squire, was a boy, but it's still a hive of industry. The old mill buildings are still intact, and they've been sold on and renovated by new businesses. This is the area where Squire Schofield would have worked as a bolt and screw maker in a foundry in the 1890s. But we're in Wall Street, and this is where Squire Schofield, Philip's great-grandfather, was born in 1876. He was one of at least 7 children born to Luke and Mary Ann Schofield. Well, obviously, it's completely different now to what it was like then, but imagine narrow back-to-back houses encrusted in soot, families only sharing perhaps 1 or 2 rooms in the house, no bathrooms at all, and outside loos. And this used to be William Street, and this is where Squire Schofield lived as a young married man in 1901. He would have walked right up this street every morning to get to the Cow Hill Iron Foundry, which is where he worked. Like father, like son, Squire had followed his father, Luke Schofield, into the foundry, manufacturing bolts and screws. But Luke, who's Philip's great-great-grandfather, didn't come from the Oldham area. These are the back streets of Gorton, where Luke lived as a young man, and this is the kind of thing he would have worn. My research showed that Luke was born in Rochdale. This tells us that his father, Thomas Schofield, who is Philip's great-great-great-grandfather, was also from this area, and I found a record of Thomas living in an Eastgate Street. This is where Thomas Schofield lived in 1851. Unlike his son, he worked in another great Lancashire industry, cotton. Cotton was king in the 18th century, so by Thomas Schofield's time it was well established as Rochdale's major industry, and Thomas had achieved the ultimate status of an overlooker.
The overlooker was like a boss over all the machines and the workers, and he had this office up above, so he could sort of overlook them all and know what they were all doing, and you know, he was the boss.
So how would Thomas have become an overlooker? I mean, would he have been born into a sort of overlooker class, or would he have worked his way up from the bottom?
I think they'd have to work on the machines first to know all about it, and then work their way up.
Eastgate Street is the earliest place I can be absolutely certain Thomas Schofield lived. Before then, there were just so many Thomas Schofields in the area, I can't be absolutely certain which one of them was Philip's ancestor. But I do know where Philip's surname comes from, and that's up there on the moors. Saddleworth Moor was settled by Vikings in the 9th and 10th centuries. Many local words and surnames derived from Old Norse. Schofield is one of them, and it means a hut in a field. And there is a hut in a field. How remarkable. We're on Saddleworth Moor. We're only a few miles up outside Oldham and Rochdale, and I'm on my way to Saddleworth Churchyard. I met the sexton of St Chad's Church, Stanley Cowburn, who showed me just some of the Schofield plots.
This is the index for a Schofield family.
Right. Gosh, already, just immediately they spring out, don't they?
Yeah.
It really does show that Schofield is easily one of the most popular names in this parish.
Quite,
Yes. Yes, that's the Schofield one. So, Stanley, there are a lot of Schofields.
Oh,
here in
yes,
the
yes.
graveyard,
A
aren't
very large family, Schofields and Buckleys.
I think that really brings us to the end of our journey here, because although I can't say which of the Schofields here is related to Philip, I think we do know really that his family generally are, in fact, right here,
Oh, of course.
under our feet, in Saddleworth. After having a brief insight into the lives of Thomas, Luke and Squire, I've discovered that these Schofields were hard grafters who all plied their trades in the Manchester region. And how lucky they were to have their origins in such a beautiful part of the world.
So there they are. And it does get very difficult, doesn't it? Once you get back to that Thomas, then there are so many of them.
The problem I had was that your surname, your family were so local, and there are so many of them locally. That's what the problem was. There were about 10 Thomas Schofields baptised in just 1 year in Rochdale in 1815. But it does illustrate the fact that that really is the epicentre of your family name. And you know, everywhere we went, there was sort of we passed Schofield streets, and sort of we asked, and people would say, "Oh, I know, there's a Schofield lived over there and lived over there." And
Common as muck.
Well, no, not necessarily. We have a little bit of salaciousness about a Schofield, shortly.
the salacious story.
Wait,
no.
hold it. We're going to have a little commercial break. I would also suggest, yes. You want to know the answer, whether it's right or wrong, don't you? No. Here we go. Now I've lost my thread now. What am I talking about? Yes, salacious gossip. We'll see that after the break. And also I would suggest you had a pen and a bit of paper, because Auntie's going to give us some tips on how you can start looking as well. And apparently there's a sneak peek at my family history too, so we'll see you after the break. Welcome back. Now, before the break, Anthony Adolph found the roots of the Schofield family in beautiful Saddleworth. But that's not all he discovered. Prepare to have your foundations rocked.
Really?
You met a man, Anthony, didn't you, who
We met a
refused
man.
to speak on camera
Yes.
about the story.
Well, we were obviously looking for some interesting, exciting stories, and he said, "Oh, I'll tell you a story." And I said, "Oh, go on," you know. And he wouldn't say it on camera. But basically, Saddleworth is where most of the Schofields originate up there. And apparently, 200 years ago, there was a chap called Edward Schofield who discovered his wife had had an affair. And his way of dealing with this problem was his project for the rest of his life was to try and get as many other wives in Saddleworth as possible pregnant. So apparently, and this is only a story, I don't know whether it's true or not, but the story goes that apparently quite a lot of the families in Saddleworth could actually be Schofields.
Because of this guy taking his revenge upon
Edward
the ladies
Schofield.
of the
Yes.
men of the village.
Yes, so we went thinking there were quite a lot of Schofields here, but in fact, according to this one story, apparently most of Saddleworth could actually be Schofields.
And that was Edward?
That was Edward Schofield. Not
Yes.
someone I know is related to, but I mean someone who's almost certainly is.
Good gracious, Edward the Goer.
Yeah, so a lot of them around, a prolific family.
Well,
Certainly.
there are two ways of looking back into your genealogy, aren't there? The way you did it there, going through records and going through sort of churches and things like that.
Very
births,
much
marriages, and deaths.
birth and marriage records, and the censuses, the wonderful censuses that tell you exactly where people lived at
Yeah.
specific times.
Because the first time we met you, you came to talk about the 1837 census that's gone online, wasn't it? Was that?
No, I came on first to talk about my own book, actually.
Oh, did you?
Mike, do you remember? You got so excited. You were so excited about the fact I was doing your family trees.
Yeah, that's right. We did. 6 months later, we found you.
So there was that
but
way.
no, sorry, yes.
That way there, looking into the way you looked into mine. How did you look into Fern's?
Very similar, actually, because tracing back a family from the present into the 19th century, you are using these documents, and they're pretty basic, birth, marriage records, and I say the census, and a lot of the censuses are now actually online on the internet. In fact, your website, This Morning website's now got an up-to-date list of where you can find those